Oh, what a beautiful morning. Oh, what a beautiful day.
That sounds like my breakfast being made upstairs. Oh, hi, I'm Alan Smith. You know, there are lots of different ways to go about things. Sometimes we tend to overcomplicate things. They could be a lot simpler. You know, my motto is that we really ought to work smarter, not harder.
Alan, your breakfast program is complete.
Planting tomatoes is simple, but if you're worried about the foundation of your plants and making sure it has an adequate root system, my friend Shauna Coronado has got a great tip that will make sure that you've got a solid foundation.
Hey, my name's Shauna Coronado, and right now I'm at P. Allen Smith's garden home. And today I want to show you a tip, how to plant Ralph. Now, this is my friend Ralph. He's a tomato, and there's a special way to plant a tomato, and what it'll do is make your tomato stronger and tougher all through the season. Okay, so here's the idea. You rip off Ralph's arms. I'm gonna do it. I'm ripping off his arms, like that. You don't break the stem. Gotta rip them all off. What we have is one giant long stem. Now, what we wanna do is dig a trench. Straight trench in the soil. Close enough. And we're gonna lay Ralph down. And what we're gonna do is put him right on the side. Now, it looks like I'm being harsh to Ralph, but the reality is that we're gonna give him new life. I think we're gonna even pull one more arm off. When we lay him all the way down, what happens is we cover him with soil, and then Ralph the superhero grows new roots all by himself. It's really cool. He grows little tiny root hairs all along this, and pretty soon it will be like a rock. It's a great foundation for your tomatoes to grow around. So we'll cover it all with soil, and then what we'll do is make sure that there's only a little bit of Ralph peeping up. And that's it. That's all there is to it. Easy way to plant a tomato, and it's going to make your garden far more successful.
There's a lot to be said for keeping it simple. Some of the best recipes only have a few ingredients, and this recipe is no exception. We're taking it easy, Italiano style.
Barbara Bruno, da San Giorgio, provincia di Salerno, Italia. Vado a visitare mio figlio e mia nuora a Arkansas, perché mia nuora aspetta i bambini e noi siamo troppo felici. Quando sono felice mi piace cucinare. Quando la gente viene all'improvviso a casa mia, io ci dico sedetevi alla tavola e ci preparo un po' di formaggio, un po' di vino e mentre che cucino mezz'ora, 20 minuti. Spaghetti sui alla napoletana, perché il pranzo è più spicciativo, è più svelto. Prima ho messo un po' di olio, l'aglio l'ho fatto soffriggere un po', poi ho messo i pomodori, piccoline, non piccoline, no, abbastanza bene, non grossi perché a nessuno piace. Perché questo è un cuore mio, così mi dice farle, insomma. E si è fatto, l'aglio si è fatto biondo e poi ci ho messo i pomodori con basilica. Cocca un chilo e mezzo di pomodoro. E poi ci ho messo i coperchi sopra per fare un po' di stima. E dopo ho tolto il coperchio ci ho messo un po' di sale, un po' di pepe e dentro la salsa poco formaggio, che per dare un sapore meglio. Quando incomincia a accendere la stufa, metto la high e dopo abbassalo un poco, metto a medium e dopo alzo un'altra volta perché si deve finire a asciugare la salsa. Poi quando stai cucinando si sta facendo piccoline i pezzi che ho tagliato per dentro. Poi ho messo la pentola dell'acqua, che a me mi piace al dente. Anzi, a tutti quanti piacciono al dente quelli che vengono a casa mia. Muscio so bene perché la gente tengono i denti. 2 litri di acqua nella pasta. Lavata la pasta e l'ho messa in un fry pan. Così va la salsa, l'ho girata. Poi ci ho messo un po' di olio. Ho messo i spaghetti dentro al piatto. Poi ci ho tagliato un po' di basilica sopra e un po' di formaggio. Quando il piatto si è fatto preparato bene, quello che si mangia si gode. Buona salute e buon appetito! Cosa? Invece la vogliamo? Come so?
Sono ottime.
The thing I enjoy the most about gardening is getting my hands in the soil. Well, almost. I mean, actually, I do love the abundant beauty that these flowers will produce. But you know, it's that in-between stuff that often gets in the way for a lot of us. Watering, for instance. You know, keeping the soil consistently moist in these containers is a key to success, but it can take a long time. That's why I use one of these drip irrigation kits, and it's so easy to assemble, and it takes so much of the work away from enjoying these beautiful containers through the entire season. In fact, with a single kit, I can water up to 10 potted plants like this. For a 10 to 12 inch container, one dripper works fine. For a 14 to 20 inch, well, you may need 2 drippers. If you've got a 24 inch container or larger, use 3 drippers. Place the dripper in the pot near the base of the plant where the plant meets the soil using a support stake. So let's talk timing for just a moment. You're probably going to water your containers about an hour a day. Now let's say it gets really hot, you may have to increase that a little bit. And if you want this to become a completely hands-off project where you don't have to worry about watering anymore, you can take a battery-operated faucet timer and attach it to the faucet and it'll come on automatically. And you don't have to think about watering anymore. So why don't you give it a try? Now, a couple of things to keep in mind. These tubes that run around, they're easily hidden, so when you hook it up, put them toward the back so you don't see them. And I always use saucers under my containers. It's just a little extra insurance policy to make sure that the soil stays consistently moist. Now, there's more than one way to keep your garden fully hydrated. Why not consider using soaker hoses? You may recall some time ago I challenged my friends, the Chubby Vegetarian, to come up with a recipe based on herbs and vegetables that they would grow in a single container. And that recipe needed to be really yummy. They didn't disappoint. After growing sweet basil, some white onions, Italian oregano, Gretel eggplants, and Big Bertha bell peppers together in a container, they came up with a Thai-inspired green curry with eggplant and peppers. Doesn't it just look wonderful? Now in return, the Chubby Vegetarian challenged me to come up with a traditional family recipe, but make it vegetarian. So I decided to create a meatloaf. Yep, a meatloaf. A meatless meatloaf, no hamburger meat. Now you may think that's totally impossible, but it's actually very good. Let me show you how. To start, preheat the broiler on your oven to high. Now while that's heating up, cut one large red and one large green bell pepper in half lengthwise, discarding the seeds and membranes. Place the pepper halves, skin side up, on a foil-lined baking sheet. Flatten with your hand. Now broil these for 10 to 12 minutes or until they're blackened. Then once they've just about cooled, remove the skin and finally chop. Now go ahead and reduce the oven temperature to 350. In quarters, finely chop 2 pounds of cremini mushrooms in a food processor. In a large nonstick skillet over medium-high heat, add 1 tablespoon of olive oil to the pan, and then add the mushrooms to the pan and saute for 15 minutes or until the liquid evaporates, stirring occasionally. So the mushroom is the essence of this meatloaf, and all I'm doing is sauteing it. It smells great. Then in the same skillet, add 1 cup of asparagus cut into 1/2-inch pieces, 1 coarsely chopped carrot, and an onion in the pan, and saute this for about 6 minutes until tender, stirring occasionally. Then what you want to do is you want to add this onion and vegetable mixture with the peppers into the mushrooms. Next, we're ready to spice this up by adding 1 cup of toasted walnuts, 1 cup of toasted breadcrumbs, 2 tablespoons of fresh chopped basil, 2 tablespoons of fresh thyme, 2 tablespoons of tomato paste, 1 teaspoon of Dijon mustard, about 1/2 teaspoon of salt and pepper, 4 ounces of Parmigiano Reggiano cheese, and 2 lightly beaten eggs. Now once you have everything thoroughly blended together like this, it's time to put it into a loaf pan. Now the size pan that I like to use is a 9x5, and I've greased it. And once we get all of this mixture in here, we're going to pop it into the oven. And we're going to bake this for about 45 minutes at 350 degrees. There we go. It's coming out nicely. It really looks good, and I wish you could smell it. So I'm just going to kind of pack it around like this. Bring it around on the side. There you go, little meatloaf. Okay, so while your meatless meatloaf is cooking, you want to create a nice little sauce to go on top. Now you can do ketchup if you like, but what I'm going to use here is a little more of that tomato paste we used earlier in the body of the meatloaf, 2 heaping tablespoons, and then I've got a tablespoon of vegetable broth. And then here, I'm just going to use about 1/4 teaspoon of Dijon mustard. I'm just going to mix all this together. You can add a little more mustard if you like that flavor. After your meatless meatloaf cooks, brush on the topping and bake for an additional 10 minutes. And then you're finished. You've got a wonderful vegetarian version of a great American classic. Give it a try. I use containers in my garden in many different ways. One of the most effective ways is to use them as focal points. You see, a focal point can be any object that grabs your attention as you walk through the garden. In my fountain garden, a large cast iron urn serves as a home to a variegated agave, which makes a striking focal point. In the shade garden, a large urn along a path is a focal point. In the front garden, a smaller urn at one end serves as, you might guess, a focal point. I think you get the message. Containers can create interesting visual points in the garden. All right, one question I'm always asked is, how do I choose a container for my garden? Well, for me, I always take a lead from the architecture or the style of the home. You see, in my garden, my house is a colonial revival cottage from around 1900. The containers I select are classic in shape, such as urns and very basic terracotta containers. These reflect the ambience of the garden and the style of the house. In a more modern style garden, glazed ceramic pots might be more appropriate. I love how a friend of mine contrasted this blue glazed container with Lismachia or creeping Jenny. Focal points don't have to be fancy. Simple containers strategically placed in a garden can add a great deal to a landscape. Now, there are a few other things you may want to consider about containers when selecting them. The first is size. You see, the larger the container, the greater the volume of soil. The more soil you have in there, the more moisture it can hold, and this will keep your plants from drying out so fast. It cuts down on maintenance for you. Now, another consideration is the quality of the container itself. I like to go for a high-grade container, one that's durable and will last for a long time. I mean, I've used containers in my garden for up to 10 to 15 years. I also tend to go for containers that are made from natural materials, like this high-grade terracotta. Now, another question that I'm asked frequently is, what about drainage? Shouldn't I put something in the bottom of the container to aid in getting the water out? Well, some folks use these pieces of terracotta, old shards like this, to aid in drainage, or even gravel. But if you use a high-grade potting soil like this, you really don't have to worry about it. It'll drain just fine. All right, with our containers selected, now it's time to get started planting. Here's the deal. You already have 100 things you've got to get done during the week when you get home from work. But my friend Amy James has a plan of attack where you can cook once and eat all week long.
I'm Amy James. I blog at oureverydaydinners.com. I blog about what I cook my family for dinner every night. There's 5 of us, and so I cook something nutritious and delicious as often as I can. It is a challenge to cook a new meal every single night. So one thing I like to do is cook a lot on a weekend and spread out the leftovers in new and different ways throughout the week. One thing I like to do is cook chicken breasts on a Sunday, and I can get one meal from the chicken breasts just as they are, and then save the leftovers, and I can make chicken fried rice. I can make chicken and black bean burrito bowls. I can use the chicken for a Cobb salad. And then I also roast some potatoes alongside the chicken, and I can make a pizza with those leftover potatoes. They're lemon, garlic, and herb potatoes. You start with 2 pounds of Yukon Gold potatoes, and then you cut them up into bite-sized pieces, and then you drizzle them with olive oil and sprinkle them with salt and pepper. You toss that together really well, and you put them in a 400-degree preheated oven for about 20 minutes until they start to brown. Then you pull them out of the oven, you chop up some garlic, toss the garlic together with the potatoes, you put them back into the oven, you cook them for about 10 more minutes until everything's nice and brown. Then when that all comes out of the oven, you grate up some lemon zest, some lemon juice, you chop up some chives, parsley, you can add other herbs if you want. You toss it all together, that's it. I like to cook the chicken on top of the stove and then you transfer it into the oven to cook it all the way through, so it makes it a little bit less time consuming for you. So you can make a little pan gravy with some butter and a little chicken stock, pour it over the chicken, and then you can have your potatoes and the chicken together. And I also like to roast vegetables, squash, zucchini, whatever you have, just drizzle it with a little olive oil, salt and pepper, roast those too. And then you can also have the roasted vegetables. And so what I've done is I found a way to cook one time and just reuse it in completely different ways.
Well, we've got the kitchen all tidied up. The meatloaf is finished, and oh, it smells so good. I just wish you could smell it and taste it. It is really great. I hope you'll give this a try. Until next time, I'm Alan Smith.
Oops. You can't make an omelet without breaking all of the eggs. At least once.
Cosa? Invece da quel come sono?
Sono ottime,
Posso mettere un'altra volta?
Sì.
Dove vai a mangiare?
sul tavolo.